When a waitress served Barron Trump in a quiet café, she expected just another ordinary shift. But what he left behind, a note and a tip, stunned her, bringing tears to her eyes and igniting a nationwide discussion. The aroma of freshly brewed espresso mingled with the scent of warm pastries lingering in the air. The afternoon lull had stretched on longer than usual, and the gentle hum of conversation had faded into a soft murmur. For Dinah, the shift felt never-ending. Every minute dragged on, and every clatter of cutlery reminded her how long she'd been on her feet. She wiped down the last table by the window and checked her phone. Just one more hour to go. Rent was due in 2 days and her phone bill was still unpaid. The tips that day had been dismal, mostly loose change left absent-mindedly by patrons too engrossed in their phones to make eye contact. Dinah exhaled, tightened her ponytail and grabbed her order pad. Her manager, an older woman with weary eyes, glanced at her as if to say, "Hang in there." But Dinah was already operating on autopilot. Then, the bell above the door jingled. The sound jolted her back to attention. A young man entered. Tall, lean, dressed in a simple shirt and slacks that gave him an effortlessly polished look. 2 men followed closely behind, blending seamlessly into the background, their sharp gazes scanning every corner of the café. It wasn't the kind of place that attracted high-profile guests, certainly not the kind of spot where you'd expect a celebrity, let alone someone with what appeared to be security detail. Dinah froze momentarily, her pen hovering above her notepad. But professionalism kicked in, and she approached the table in the far corner where the young man had settled. "Good afternoon," she said, mustering her best smile. "Can I get you something to start?" The young man looked up, and for a brief moment Dinah almost forgot what she was supposed to say. His face was strikingly familiar. There was something about his expression, calm, composed, yet reserved. And then it clicked. Barron Trump. She had seen his face plastered all over the news for years, the son of a former president. Her pulse quickened, but she did what she had been trained to do, stay professional. He was just another customer. "I'll just have a cappuccino and maybe one of those croissants," Barron said softly. His voice was polite yet subdued. "Absolutely. Anything else?" He shook his head. "That'll be perfect, thank you." His words were simple, but there was something in his tone, something Dinah couldn't quite place. Kindness, perhaps, or just sincerity. She jotted down the order, turned toward the counter, and tried to ignore the odd flutter in her chest. Was it nerves? Fatigue? Something about this moment stuck with her. As Dinah prepared the coffee, she found herself glancing back at his table. Little did she know this seemingly insignificant interaction was about to take a turn that would change her entire day, maybe even her week. The cappuccino machine hissed as she frothed the milk, her hands steady, movements precise, anything to distract from the strange, nervous energy swirling inside her. Why am I acting like this, she wondered. Barron Trump, of all people. She stole another glance at the table. He sat quietly, his posture upright but not rigid. He wasn't scrolling through a phone or typing on a laptop like most customers. Instead, he gazed out the window, watching the street outside, lost in thought. Occasionally, he sipped from the glass of water she had placed earlier. By the time the cappuccino and croissant were ready, Dinah had regained her composure. She balanced the tray carefully and walked toward his table. "Here you go," she said, setting the cup and plate down gently in front of him. He looked up and offered a faint smile. "Thank you." "You're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else," she replied, keeping her tone polite yet neutral. As she turned to return to the counter, something stopped her. Maybe it was the way his gaze lingered, curious but not intrusive. Or maybe it was just her own exhaustion making her hyper-aware. Either way, her heart fluttered again. Minutes passed, and Dinah busied herself wiping tables and refilling sugar containers. The café had quieted once more, the only sound the faint hum of music playing softly through the speakers. But something felt different. The atmosphere carried an invisible weight, an unspoken energy urging her to pay attention. From the corner of her eye she noticed Barron pull a pen from his pocket. As he finished his meal, he leaned over the receipt, scribbling something quickly, as if he didn't want anyone to see. He folded the paper neatly and slid it under the empty coffee cup. Then he stood, grabbing his coat and phone. Dinah watched for just a second before forcing herself to stay focused. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as he passed by. Barron turned back slightly, offering another small smile. "Have a good day." His words lingered longer than they should have. Dinah stood there, frozen in the middle of the café, watching as he walked out, his security trailing closely behind. The bell above the door rang one last time, then silence fell over the room once more. She let out a slow breath, picked up her tray, and walked over to clear the table. The cappuccino cup was empty, a faint ring of foam clinging to the rim. Beside it, the croissant plate held nothing but a few scattered crumbs. And then, there it was. The receipt. Dinah picked up the receipt carefully, the folded paper feeling oddly heavy in her hands. Her first thought was about the tip. Maybe it would be generous. Wealthy customers often left large sums, more out of habit than kindness. A way to compensate for their lack of personal interaction. But as she unfolded the slip of paper, the air in her lungs vanished. At the bottom, beneath the total, was a number, a tip so large it made her stomach lurch, 4 crisp digits, and just above it, a handwritten note. "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." Dinah's hands began to tremble. She read the words again, this time slower, letting each sentence fully sink in. Her gaze darted toward the door where Barron had disappeared, but the world beyond was a blur. Her vision clouded as hot tears welled up in her eyes. Her knees wobbled. She stumbled into the empty chair across from where he had been sitting, gripping the note as if letting go would make the moment disappear. The tip. It wasn't about the money. It was about the words. The weight of empathy. Someone she never imagined would notice her had seen her. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, Dinah felt recognized. Tears streamed down her face as she let the words settle into her heart. She thought about what they meant, how they echoed through every struggle she had silently endured. But this moment wasn't just hers. Soon someone else would see the note, and Dinah's story was about to spread far beyond the walls of the café. The sound of the café door swinging open jolted her from her daze. She wiped her tears quickly with the back of her hand and tucked the note into her apron pocket just as her manager approached. "You okay?" her manager asked, narrowing her eyes with concern. "What happened?" Dinah hesitated for a second, searching for the right words. I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked slightly. "Just a really generous tip." Her manager raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Generous enough to make you cry?" Dinah nodded, letting out a shaky laugh. She reached for the folded receipt and held it out. The moment her manager saw the number, she let out a low whistle. "No way. Who left this?" "Corner table," Dinah replied, her voice quieter now. Her manager frowned slightly. "Wait, you mean—" "That was Barron Trump," Dinah confirmed. Her manager blinked. "The Barron Trump? You're serious?" "Yeah." Dinah swallowed, pulling the note from her pocket. "But it's not just the money." She handed the note over carefully, almost reverently, as if it were something fragile, something precious. Her manager read it, and for the first time in months, Dinah saw a softness in her boss's expression. "Wow," she whispered, handing it back. That's something else." "It really is," Dinah agreed, carefully folding the note again like it was a rare treasure. "I don't even know why he wrote it. I didn't do anything special." Her manager studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Sometimes people just know, Dinah," she said. "They see what you're going through, even if you think you're hiding it. You're here every day, working your tail off, always polite to customers, even the ones who don't deserve it." Maybe he saw that. Dinah swallowed hard, a lump forming in her throat. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. For months, she had been barely keeping her head above water, working double shifts just to make rent, skipping meals to afford her mom's medications, and through it all she had been kind because that was the one part of herself she refused to let the world take away. And somehow he had seen that. As the minutes passed, a quiet buzz spread through the café. A couple of co-workers whispered near the pastry case, stealing glances at the table where Barron had sat. News traveled fast. It wasn't long before one of the baristas walked up to Dana, her eyes wide with excitement. "You served him, didn't you?" the girl asked, barely containing her disbelief. "What did he say? Was he nice?" Dana smiled faintly. "Yeah," she said. "He was really nice." "Man, I would have freaked out," the barista laughed. "That's insane." Dana didn't say anything more. She didn't mention the note. She didn't bring up the tip. Somehow, explaining it felt like exposing something deeply personal, like putting a sacred moment on display. For now it was hers to hold. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Every interaction felt a little lighter. Every table she cleared seemed a little easier. The weight she had been carrying for so long felt just a little less heavy. And when she finally untied her apron at the end of the day, she reached into her pocket and ran her fingers over the folded note, still safely tucked away. As Dana stepped out of the cafe and headed toward the subway station, she held on to that piece of paper like it was a promise, a reminder. Brighter days were coming. Dana found herself holding the receipt again, her eyes fixed on the words. "My family has been where you are. Stay strong. Brighter days are coming." She whispered the sentence under her breath, as if saying it aloud might make it real. He didn't have to write that, he didn't have to care. But he did. As the train rumbled through the underground tunnels, Dana closed her eyes and, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to believe that maybe things would get better. What she didn't know was that this quiet, personal moment was about to turn into something far bigger than she ever imagined. The note wouldn't stay a secret for long. The next morning, the first light of dawn barely crept through the window of Dana's small apartment when the sharp buzz of her phone broke the silence. Groaning, she rolled over, blindly reaching for it. Her lock screen was flooded with notifications. "Why is everyone texting me?" she mumbled, squinting at the screen. Dozens of messages filled her inbox. "Girl, is this you? You're famous? Is this real?" Her thumb hovered over one message that included a link. A screenshot of a Daily Post headline stared back at her. "Barron Trump leaves Waitress a touching note and a huge tip. Internet reacts." Dana shot upright in bed, her pulse pounding in her ears. She clicked the link, her breath catching as she read. The article laid out everything. The struggling waitress, the unexpected guest, the note filled with empathy, the tip that seemed to change everything. And there it was. A photo of her note. Barron Trump's handwriting, captured in perfect detail, now plastered across the internet. Dana's hands trembled as she scrolled. How did this happen? Another message lit up her screen, this one from a coworker. "That guy at table 5 yesterday. Someone must have seen the note and snapped a picture. It's everywhere now." Her stomach dropped. Everywhere? She flipped through her social media apps, and sure enough, it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The note had gone viral. Hundreds of comments flooded in. "This is what the world needs more of. Barron Trump seems like such a kind soul. I don't care what anyone says, this is beautiful. Wait, what about the waitress? I hope she's okay." The more Dana read, the more overwhelmed she became. Strangers were analyzing her life, debating it, romanticizing it, assuming things about her without knowing a single detail. She dropped the phone onto her bed, pressing her palms against her forehead. "What do I do now?" she whispered. A cough echoed from the next room. Her mother. Reality yanked her back. No matter what was happening online, her rent was still due. Her mother still needed medication. There were still groceries to buy. She couldn't afford to let this consume her. But even as she grabbed her bag and hurried off to work, an uneasy feeling settled deep in her chest. She wasn't ready for her story to belong to the world. The cafe felt different that day. The moment Dana stepped inside, she felt the weight of eyes on her. Co-workers exchanged glances, their smiles softer, almost proud. A couple of regulars lifted their heads from their coffee cups, as if trying to confirm if she was the waitress from the article. Her manager greeted her with an uncharacteristically wide grin. "Well, look at you. You're a local hero now." Dana winced. "I don't feel like one." "You should," her manager said, patting her shoulder. "What happened yesterday was special, Dana. Not everyone gets to be part of something like that." The words were meant to be reassuring, but instead they made Dana feel exposed. She wasn't special. She was just a waitress doing her job. And Barron? He hadn't done it for the attention. As she tied her apron and stepped onto the floor, she felt the invisible weight of the world watching, even if no one was actually there. The morning was a blur of half-smiles and forced conversations. Customers mentioned "that nice young man," whispered about what he wrote to you. By lunchtime, things hit a boiling point. A news crew parked outside. Cameras, microphones, reporters, the works. "You've got to be kidding me," Dana muttered, peering out the window as journalists lingered near the entrance, chatting with her manager. Her stomach twisted when one of them caught her eye and gave a polite wave. "You're the talk of the town," her co-worker teased. "Lucky me," Dana grumbled. She ducked behind the counter and pulled out her phone. The headlines kept multiplying. The comments poured in faster than she could keep up. That note probably saved her life. This is a lesson in kindness. Small gestures mean everything. More stories like this, please. Somewhere beneath all the chaos, a flicker of something warm sparked in Dana's chest. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about kindness. About people remembering that even small gestures could leave an enormous impact. But Dana still had a decision to make, one that would determine how this chapter of her story ended. By the time her shift ended, the cafe felt suffocating under the weight of attention. She slipped out the back door, avoiding the reporters still camped outside. The moment her sneakers hit the pavement, she exhaled, as if shaking off the unseen eyes that had followed her all day. The walk home felt different. The streets were the same, but she wasn't. Dana clutched her bag tightly, the note still safely tucked inside. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another message. "Dana, they want you on TV, morning show. Call me?" It was her manager. Dana stopped walking, her feet frozen to the sidewalk. She stared at the screen. The city bustled around her, but all she could hear was the pounding of her own heartbeat. What was she supposed to do now? The thought made her uneasy. Going on television, telling her story to the world? No, that wasn't her. She didn't want her face plastered across screens, her life dissected by strangers. But then a small voice inside whispered, "Wouldn't it be nice to explain, to tell people that it was never about the money or the attention, but about something much deeper, about kindness?" Dana stared at her phone for a long moment before shoving it into her bag. She wasn't ready to answer yet. At home, Dana found her mother sitting in her recliner, flipping through TV channels. Just as Dana stepped into the room, a familiar voice echoed from the screen. "A simple note, left by Barron Trump for a hard-working waitress, is touching hearts across the country." Dana froze. There it was, a blurred image of her note, bold headlines flashing underneath. "A quiet act of generosity sparks national conversation." Her mother looked up, coughing softly. "That's you, isn't it?" Dana sighed, dropping her bag. "Yeah, Mum. That's me." Her mother's expression softened as she patted the spot beside her. "It's a good thing, you know. People need stories like this." "I didn't ask for this," Dana muttered, crossing her arms. Her mom simply smiled. "Sometimes the good things find you when you're not looking for them." She reached for Dana's hand, squeezing it gently. "What he wrote, that was special, and people are talking about it because they need to believe that kindness still exists in this world. You're part of that now." Dana swallowed hard. It feels too big for me, Mom, like I don't deserve it." Her mom shook her head slowly. "Don't say that. You work hard every single day to keep us afloat. You're kind, even when you're exhausted. That's who you are, Dana. And someone saw it. Someone reminded you that you matter." Dana's eyes welled with tears. Only this time she didn't fight them. Her mother was right. The note wasn't just about her. It was about hope. about proving that small gestures still held power, that kindness still had weight. That night, as Dana lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzed once more. She didn't need to check it. She already knew. More messages, more noise, more people trying to reach her, but beneath all of that, the note remained tucked under her pillow. A reminder. Someone had seen her. For once, Dana didn't feel invisible. The next morning, she made her decision. She called her manager. "Tell the morning show I'll do it." Her manager nearly dropped the phone. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but I'm not going to talk about the money. I want to talk about the note, about kindness. That's all." The interview was simple. Dana sat on a couch, hands folded nervously in her lap as the host leaned forward. "Dana, you've been in the spotlight these past few days because of something unexpected. A note and a generous tip from Barron Trump. Can you tell us how it felt when you first read it?" She took a breath, carefully choosing her words. "Honestly, it caught me off guard. It wasn't about the money, it was about what he wrote. I've been going through a rough time, and those words meant more than I can explain." The host nodded. The note said, "Your kindness and hard work don't go unnoticed. My family has been where you are. Stay strong, brighter days are coming." What do you think he meant by that? Dana glanced at the camera. Suddenly, it didn't feel like she was speaking to just the host. It felt like she was talking to everyone watching. "I think he meant that we all struggle at some point, no matter who we are or where we come from, and sometimes when you're at your lowest, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. It reminds you that someone sees you, that you're not alone." For a moment the studio was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The host offered a warm smile. "That's a beautiful message, Dana. If Barron is watching, is there anything you'd like to say to him?" Her voice wavered slightly, but she smiled. "Just, thank you. Not for the money, but for seeing me, for reminding me to hold on to hope. You made more of a difference than you know." When the interview aired, Dana didn't check her phone. She didn't read the comments or the headlines. Instead, the next day she tied on her apron and went back to work. The cafe was busier than ever. Customers smiled at her in a way they never had before, not because they knew her story, but because she finally felt seen. People left kind notes scribbled on napkins. Some tipped a little extra. Others simply said thank you and meant it. Dana kept Barron's note tucked safely inside her wallet, where it would stay for years. A quiet reminder that small gestures matter, that you never know how much hope a few words can bring, because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. Maybe it's a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of recognition. Who can you lift up today? Remember, brighter days are coming for all of us. Sometimes we just need a reminder.